the volume.
Turn up the volume.
You've arrived at the destination for all things Kentucky. This is the Bleed Blue Network Podcast.
Hi, everyone. This is Jacob, and
this is Casey.
And we are with Bleed Blue Zone. So we are a new podcast coming to the Bleed Blue Network, where Casey and I take a very analytical sort of approach and aspect look at as we kind of go throughout the season. We're definitely going to be focusing a lot on Kentucky basketball, but also diving into some Kentucky football. Depending on how the Batcats do today, maybe we might even be talking about their performance in Super Regionals next week and maybe even the College World Series after that. So we're really excited to kind of get things started. So I thought that, before we just kind of like dive in and kind of touch on some like recent topics, Casey and I would kind of give a little bit of a backstory of like kind of how we came to be Kentucky fans specifically. And where we're at in our journey today. So Casey, I'll let you go ahead and do that first.
Yeah, so I'm obviously very young for anyone that doesn't follow me on Twitter. My parents actually met at Kentucky. That's both where they went. In addition to that, I kind of became a fan around the 2018-19 team. I was kind of following prior to that. I remember going to an Arkansas game. There we had Kevin Knox, Winion Gabriel, Shea, I believe. We beat them. That was good. But yeah, I really started following that Tyler Hero season. I remember how awful I felt after we lost to Auburn in that Elite Eight game in overtime. I had to go to a sports practice after, and I ended up being late. And I got screamed at for being late because we didn't want to miss the game. So I've been always following Kentucky basketball since, and that's kind of my niche. So yeah.
Similarly, around the same time as when I became a fan. So I did not go to Kentucky for my undergraduate degree, but I did go there for my master's degree and also worked at UK during that time. And I'd never really been super bought into college sports. But after just like working at an SEC school, it is kind of a cult in a way. And so I really kind of bought into it pretty quickly. In the first season, I like fully watched Kentucky's season and didn't miss a single game. Was the COVID year, the 2021 season, which was to say the least. And so that's why like anytime someone tries to accuse me of being a bandwagon fan, I always remind them that I literally became a fan during Kentucky's worst season performance in the history of the program. I was following a little bit the year before in the 2019 team. I actually had a friend that worked as a manager for that team, and so I actually got a tour of Kraft, which was really cool. Just kind of stayed being a fan since. And so I think it's kind of cool that Casey and I also have like the perspective of being younger fans in terms of like our fanhood. And I think it'll be really cool as we have some episode ideas planned where we might go through some of like the historical teams and kind of talk about, their matchup and how they'd match up to like our roster today or stuff like that. So we have a lot of different like ideas where we could kind of take things. And I think, like I said, with us being such younger fans too, we have a lot to explore in that regard too. So yeah, that's just kind of how our fanhood sort of originated. And Casey, do you want to get a little bit of a backstory of like how we kind of became friends and how we got connected and how this all started?
Yeah, so actually during the coaching search, obviously after Cal left to Arkansas, it was the night of the championship where UConn had just throttled Purdue in the second half of the game. I remember there was a Twitter space and I hopped on and there were a lot of other people and everyone was just speculating, right? Everyone was reading Dan Hurley's sign language. He seemed really sad after the post-game press conference and everyone was thinking, he's going to go to Kentucky. And then like people are trying to decode audio and see what someone was saying to him after the game on the court. It just kind of that whole coaching search for those 2 weeks. We were all in Twitter spaces till 1, 2, 3 in the morning. And eventually, Nate obviously has a lot of background in terms of podcasts and working in the media. So he started up a Bleed Blue Network, and then we all kind of hopped on, and we've been really good friends since. So yeah.
Yeah, it all happened really quickly. And we all were kind of just like at the right place together at the right time. And it's kind of cool how it sort of took off from that point. But yeah, we're excited. We're I think also too, like since Casey mentioned like he is younger, so I think like he also offers a different perspective versus me, who's like almost in my approaching 30. Yikes. And so yeah, I think like two one thing like when we decided to sort of do this show together, like Casey and I both take like a very very like analytical approach, and we like looking at like the numbers and like advanced stats and stuff like that. And so I think our podcast will really be geared for people who are like on the nerdier side of sports. Like some people really like appreciate like the story or the sort of like season narrative. But like my love and the reason why I really fell in love with like college sports and specifically like Kentucky is like I really like looking at the numbers, and I think like just seeing the story that the numbers create is just really 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 fascinating. So with that being said, I think we'll just kind of kick it off. And the most recent thing at this point with us recording on Sunday, the June 2nd, is we recently just got the announcement of Jaxson Robinson officially joining the roster. So Casey, what was like your initial thoughts throughout like his time of being in the draft for consideration, and like your thoughts leading up to the announcement?
Yeah, so we were hosting a Twitter space kind of that night, the couple hours before the deadline, obviously. Everyone was staying up pretty late. We were worried. Didn't hear an announcement, and everyone started freaking out. It was kind of 50-50 in terms of is he going to the NBA, is he coming back to college? That morning, it would have been Thursday, early in the morning, around 10 to 11ish, he announced he was coming back. And I was filled with joy. Obviously, he was kind of the missing piece we needed in the roster in terms of three-man. Also, 45% of his minutes at BYU consisted of him playing the power forward slot. So I think it's a really good addition. Obviously, I think he's one of the best players on our team. I was surprised, Jacob, that he didn't like take BYU or Kansas into consideration at all. I think he would have came to Kentucky regardless, but I'm surprised he didn't drive up an IL doing that. So I think it's really interesting, and I think we definitely offered him a solid amount of money to make him stay and make his decision quick.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it, but I also think too, I think it just speaks to the relationship that he has with Pope specifically, where sure he definitely could have played the game and let his agent, run up the checkbook as much as like he could. But I think one, like you said, I think Pope obviously guaranteed him a pretty solid amount. And two, I think it's like he just respects him so much that he didn't want to like tease him and potentially like do that to him. It's interesting because there was a lot of like speculation and rumors of potentially the Kansas thing, or BYU kind of like there towards the end. And I will say, like, full transparency, I didn't think he was coming back. I thought he was going to stay in the draft just because like he was projected to be one of those sort of like last picks. I know that is kind of a risk, but with such a like low talent draft pool like this year, like I really thought that he would have a chance. But apparently some of those later workouts, he did get some feedback apparently that kind of indicated that like he really should just go back to college for one more year. But yeah, I agree. I think he's definitely the missing piece that we needed, especially to really take Kentucky from a fringe top 25 team, in my opinion, to what I believe is a top 15, top 20 team. And I think that's a very reasonable take. I think people who think I'm crazy for saying that or don't know ball. But yeah, so speaking of, so we talked about, let's talk about the roster a little bit. We mentioned Jaxson a little bit, that he's going to really be that solid like three man that we need. He's really that like ball getter, that bucket getter that we really need, because we have really good shooting, but we don't really have any like aggressive like bucket getters, and now we do have that. Let's just kind of go like through it one by one, and kind of talk about our thoughts about what we're feeling about some of these different players. So let's start with Kentucky's first commit, Amari Williams. Casey, what's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, so obviously Amari Williams was in a mid-major conference this year, and a lot of people can say, oh, a mid-major doesn't matter. That's statistically not correct. There's been a lot of mid-major players that have become All-Americans and really efficient players. Antonio Reeves was an All-American. Amari Williams was an All-American. I'm pretty sure Janai Broom was. If not, he will be this year. So there have been a lot of mid-major guys come up to the Power 5, and especially in the SEC. They've been really good. Amari Williams is also a very physical 6'10" center from Drexel, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year in his conference. I think he's going to be the starting five. I think it'd be stupid for him not to be. But I think he's really good. I think he brings a lot of value to the team. This season, he shot 1 for 3, I believe, from 3. So I think the 33% from 3 stats a little misleading, but I still think he's really good, and I think it's a good get for us. And I think also it kind of speaks in Pope's eyes of like, we started this roster very well in terms of going for defense, right? We got Amari Williams, and then later on we got Lamont Butler, Ortega, and then we started seeing the shift in terms of offensive capability, right? We got Andrew Carr, we got Kobe Brea, we got Kirk Krisha. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, no, I super agree. I think it, like, you know, like you were kind of saying too, speaks to, you know, Pope knew his weakness area was like defense and like his previous teams. And so, you know, he came here and the first thing he sought out was like really, really strong defensive players. I do agree. I think Amari Williams is going to be like a star. I think anyone who is like ruling him out, especially some rival fan bases because he's from some mid-major, like, again, let's not forget the explosive breakout of Dalton Connect this year. Sometimes it just takes like the right coach and the right program and the right system to really be developed properly, and to get the right appropriate minutes that you need. But yeah, I do agree. I think he will be the starting five, and I think it would be pretty silly for him not to be. So keeping going with the front court, let's talk about Andrew Carr. What's your thoughts there?
Oh, did you want to go in order of the commits or just kind of through a list?
I'm just going through the list.
Okay, yeah. Andrew Carr is obviously, I think, one of the best stretch fours in all of college basketball. I believe he shot 35% from the 3 this season. He played at Wake Forest. Had some really good games as well, I believe. He had a 30-point outing against North Carolina, I believe, 1 point, 31 against Georgia. Had 22 against Florida. So he's proven himself in big time games. Obviously, to Wake Forest, I think it's so really good in terms of having someone that has Power 5 experience. He's a very mobile center too, and I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be really good. I think he was quite literally born to play in the kind of offense Pope runs in terms of especially transition threes. So I'm really excited for him.
Yeah, no, I also think too, you know, his like obviously his shooting efficiency is really strong, but he can really score on all 3 levels with a smooth like mid-range game. And so I think he's going to be a really, really, really good piece. I also think that he's probably, I would have to guess, the starting 4 in my prediction. Again, I think it would be silly not to have him be. But yeah, I think he's a very solid get. And then also too, like he's a very veteran player, but he's also a veteran player from like a major like conference, you know, coming from Wake. So yeah, I appreciate how Pope didn't only go for mid-major transfers, but also like mixed some talent in there from Power 5 schools. So with that, let's move on to Brandon Garrison. I believe that he was kind of committing shortly thereafter. Andrew Carr, how you feeling about him?
Well, I was obviously stoked to get him. I know people were kind of rumoring that night prior to his commitment, you know, he might be going to Kentucky. A lot of people didn't know if Cal's camp was just sending a lot of BS to people to try to throw him off. I didn't think realistically we ever had a shot at him. I thought he was really good. He's a 6'11" freshman. He was a McDonald's All-American. I think it also speaks to the value of this team, obviously, that a former McDonald's All-American is likely not going to be starting on this team. You know, I think he's really good. I think it's also really fun to kind of stick it to Arkansas as well and say like, hey, we beat you in a recruiting battle. So yeah, he averaged 7.5, 5.3 rebounds. I think he's a really good piece. I think he's kind of a project in terms of being a really dominant 3-4 year player. You know, if you look at his highlight reels, some of the times he's kind of walking up and down the court. You know, I don't think he's as mobile in comparison to Amari Williams and Carr. I think he has a really good motor when he needs to, and I think he can be very efficient in a senior year.
Yeah, and I think like just being underneath like Amari and Andrew and having some of that like senior like mentorship and leadership like in the locker room will really be helpful for him, and really like to kind of give him like what he needs, and the sort of like people to like look up to and kind of like emulate like their game in the future. I also think too it's like fascinating that apparently Allegedly, I guess we don't know like the full story of how it all went down, but apparently he committed while to us, like while he was actually in the midst of his Arkansas visit. Like apparently it just went so poorly, which is just interesting because obviously we know like how strong the Cal camp is at recruiting, but I think it just goes to show that even like the most top and elite recruiters don't get every single player right, despite like some people's feelings. Like I was arguing with some like UConn fans saying that like when they're saying that like that Hurley just gets whoever he wants, and it's like, well, that's not true because we got Brea, but whatever. Um, but yeah, so I think it just like speaks to that, and just like again, sometimes people just don't click, and that's okay. And it just really just shows the sort of unpredictiveness in like the recruiting landscape right now. Yeah, I also think too, like the fact that he's a McDonald's All-American does really say something. Obviously he has a lot of potential. And I think he will get like solid minutes because as we have kind of talked about before, on spaces and stuff, like Pope is known for doing like a pretty big rotation. So I don't think he's gonna like just sit there and ride the bench and play like 5 minutes a game. Like I think he'll get some decent minutes. But yeah, really excited to see how he develops, and like you said, hopefully he stays for a few more years and can really develop into a really, really strong front court player for us in the future.
Right.
Um,
And another thing too, obviously, we've talked about bigs a lot. I think it's also important kind of to go over the guards now. I'm very high on Lamont Butler. I think he's going to be very good. Just recently won conference or defensive player of the year in his conference. His stats went down a little bit in comparison to this year. In his junior year, we went to the Final Four. Obviously, we'd asked to break down on a Twitter space a couple weeks ago. We kind of said like there was no official injury, but there were signs of it. So I also think, someone that's even not statistically super efficient from offense will still thrive, and, how Pope runs his offense. So I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be really good defensively. He's kind of just the lockdown player that gets it done. But yeah, I think he should definitely be starting as well.
yeah, I agree. I totally think he is our starting. I'm gonna say probably the starting one. Um, I mean, I think it would be stupid not to. I mean, again, I get it. Like people are, nervous because we don't have some quote unquote like crazy freshman star. And I know that Kentucky fans are still getting used to that like whole mentality. But, this is the guy that literally like sent his team, not this like past March Madness, but the one before, like it's because of him and the bucket that he got in crunch time that sent them to like the final championship game where they unfortunately lost to like UConn. But like even in that game, like he was still playing like really, really strong and really well. So I think that's great too, that like we're gonna have like a very clutch, guard that's not afraid to really shine and do what needs to be done in tough situations and isn't going to crack under pressure like we kind of saw with a lot of our guards this year in multiple situations throughout the season. So yeah, I'm super high on Lamont Butler too. Again, I think people need to get used to that they're not going to see super flashy play. Like you're not going to see the kind of stuff that like Rob Dillingham and DJ Wagner like do. You're going to see someone that's just playing really good fundamental basketball, and again, I think that's what we need. Let's move on to
Kobe Brea.
sure, yeah,
I've been
go
wanting
ahead.
to go to this one. So I think a really good player comparison for him is someone kind of similar to Kellen Grady. Kellen Grady was at a mid-major, not even mid-major. He was at Davidson, which is, yes, a mid-major, as well as Kobe Brea. Kellen Grady was averaging, I believe, 17 in his senior year. Kobe Brea was averaging 11. Kellen Brady was also, I just said Kellen Brady. Kellen Grady was averaging 34.4 minutes in comparison to Kobe Brea's 29, but shooting 38 from three, and Kobe Brea was shooting 49.8. That's pretty close, Jacob, to flipping a coin literally and saying, hey, is this going to go in or is it not? I'm really excited for him. I think he's kind of riled up our fan base too on social media. He's been replying to a lot of people. He's just, someone that seems very wholehearted, nice, and really knows what Kentucky is about. I expect him to start at the 2 or the 3. I think, my ideal starting lineup is Lamont at the 1, Brea at the 2, Jaxson at the 3, Carr at the 4, and Amari at the 5. But I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be really good. And once again, someone similar to Carr, who is absolutely born to play in this kind of offense that Pope runs.
Yeah, so you keep mentioning that about, the type of offense that the Pope runs. So from like your perspective, how would you describe like what that offense is?
Yeah, so first off, when you're looking at their offense, the 2 and the 3 are very interchangeable. They're basically the same in the concept of setting a pin down and then basically running across. A lot of the reason BYU is so successful is because they often run those fake dribble handoffs. They also are setting back screens, and these bigs are cutting. Andrew Carr is in the 92nd percentile for cutting efficiency. Mari Williams is in the 80s, I believe. So, Pope is obviously a very analytical guy. He's openly said that. And I think that's just another thing that speaks volume as to he is recruiting people based off how they fit in the team, not just, hey, let's go get, 5 of the best recruits we can find and then just try to throw them all together and see how successful we can go. So I think it's kind of a refresher, too, to someone that also wants to put their program first in comparison to just saying, hey, let's go get as many good guys as we can. And once again, just, try to win with what we have.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, too, like, I think people I think were a little bit like, again, nervous because they saw like these coming from like Dayton, but like I think people like fail to maybe know or remember, but like Dayton is like normally like a pretty like solid team. They normally make the tournament like pretty regularly. And so I mean he comes from like a good system and a good program where I do think that like he has been developed well. Obviously, like as we were talking about, his 3-point is pretty insane. And I mean, he's the leading 3-point shooter in the country this past year. Is that correct?
Yes, and by a large margin.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So the fact we have like a really, really solid 3-point shooter, I think is just a perfect addition to what we're trying to build to really round out this team. But I will say, I think the guard that I'm the most excited for, which I think a lot of people are still really anxious about, is I am very high on Colin Chandler, and I'll start off by telling you why. I know that obviously we're nervous because he, was doing a mission for the past like 2 years, coming from like the Mormon faith. And I think he did say in interviews and stuff that like, he still tried to find opportunities to play basketball when he could and to work out when he can. But him coming back, Pope actually said that he actually grew 2 inches. I think coming out of his freshman year,
6'6" now.
Yeah, he's apparently 6'6" now, which is nuts. And I remember like looking at some of his like film whenever he was in high school, in that game particularly against like Reed Shepherd, and he cooked him. Granted, Reed Shepherd was like a lot younger, but yeah, I mean he is just a very, very talented like combo guard, which I think can be like a really, really scary thing for a lot of teams if like the pieces are falling properly, and the fact that he can kind of flip in between that 1 and 2 pretty easily, I think it's just like really advantageous to us. And I really do think we're going to see solid minutes from him, and I really do think that he is going to explode off the bench. I think too, when people are worried about like his development coming back and stuff, I think Pope talked about that like he has actually developed like a training plan and system where because he obviously deals with this a lot being at BYU and having like predominantly like Mormon students that do these mission trips, that he can get him back to, I think it's like 90% of like capacity within like 6 weeks. So I think if we lock Colin Chandler into the craft center, throw away the key, and basically force him to drink protein shakes and eat a whole chicken every day, I think he could be in really, really good shape by the time the season rolls around. Casey, what's your thoughts about Colin Chandler?
Yeah, so I have a player comparison, and I think this might make people mad, but just hear me out. So I think a good comparison can be what Shea kind of was towards the end of the season. Obviously that first round game against Howard, I believe, he went absolutely bonkers when they were 12 seed. We were 5, I believe. I think he's a really good mid-range game. He's 6'6". Shea is also 6'6". I think it's an older version. I don't think you can really get to that dominancy in terms of what he was in the postseason and towards the end of the year until maybe year 2, 3, maybe 4. I'm really high on him. I think he is our best guard or freshman in that matter. But yeah.
Okay, so let's let's talk about the Kentucky boys for a second. Let's talk about Travis Perry. Now, listen, everyone, we all really, really, really need to just get ahead of this now, and not start the Reed Shepherd comparisons. They are not the same player in any way, shape, or form. So, like, let's not start that conversation. I really already feel like that's already starting to happen with him, and I kind of feel like it's just going to happen all season, and I'm going to really be combative against that because I don't think it's fair to him. But he actually, I think, set a lot of the records for like highest points in his career, like being in the state of Kentucky. And yeah, I think he's going to be really solid. I think he's not going to play a lot of minutes, but I think he is going to be a solid bench piece and come off periodically. Casey, what's your thoughts?
Obviously he had the most high school points of anyone in the state of Kentucky, led them to a state championship at Lyon County, one of the smallest schools. I think he's going to be really good. I think he's someone that plays, a couple minutes every game, and then, Pope throws him in and say, hey, shoot as many threes as you want. And maybe he goes 7 for 8 one night. Maybe he goes 0 for 5, but I think him and Trent Noah in a 2028 championship would be scary. So yeah.
Yeah. I think, you mentioned like Trent Noah too. I think he's going to be like, a solid bench piece too. I definitely don't think he's going to play much at all. I definitely don't think he might even play much even next year, but like he could be like a really, really good 3-4 year player. But yeah.
Yeah. Switching back to the transfer side of things, I think someone that can be really fun to watch is Kirk Risha. Someone who's, very efficient in terms of shooting 42.3 from the three this season. A pretty effective in transition, a very intelligent guard. I think he's someone that is just, the person that we love and then every other fan base hates, right? Someone that just gets in your face, talks crap, kisses the court, is just like talking to the refs in the middle of the game, like wondering what's going on. So I'm really excited for him. I think he's going to be really good.
Yeah, I do too. People have said that he is going to be the kind of player. Some analysts have said that he's going to be the kind of player that like we're going to love in moments, and then he's going to do some like just heinous, like really stupid things on the court, and we're going to be like, "What are you doing?" So he's definitely going to be that player where like we're going to be really hot on him at times, and then like want to run him out of town the other times. So I'm really interested to see how that is. He actually just arrived at Lexington today, and there was a video of him, and he walked in carrying a bunch of golf clubs.
I saw that too.
I was like, oh, so he's a real douchebag. I love it. Like the fact that that's his priority, the first thing to carry into his dorm room is just so funny. And then the last player to really talk about is Ainsley Almanor, which actually one of our other shows, Kyle and Sass are actually interviewing him, so look out for that coming out soon. He, I think, did a Twitter space with you guys, and I think that was like a really good conversation, but I know they're really excited to talk to him. But yeah, Casey, what's your thoughts on him?
Well, first off, I want to say I'm absolutely ashamed of you because you forgot Omega Otega away, the enforcer. So we'll touch back on that. Incredibly disrespectful. I'm very high on him. But yeah, going back to Ainsley Almanor, averaged 16, 5, and 2 this season, shooting 44%. From the three, he was shooting 39, averaging about 7.5 threes a game. So, he's a 6'7" guy. He's not afraid to shoot it. He's someone that'll definitely probably play stretch four at times. I think can be really good. So I'm really excited to watch him. Once again, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, he's just a depth piece. He probably won't play a lot, but I'm here to tell you, I think this kid can be really good, and I'm really excited to watch him play.
Yeah, no, I agree. Again, I think people just don't understand and aren't going to be used to, seeing coaching where like Pope is going to consistently use like a solid 9-10 players, like, and give them all like a fair amount of minutes. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more playing time for him than people expect. And yes, I do apologize to the Otega stands, but I did unfortunately like leave him off. Wasn't intentional. I just was counting off in my head, and I was like, I think that's 12.
I'm
But I
just
guess I don't
messing
know how
with
to
you.
count. No, I know. But yeah. So Ortega, I am really excited about him too. I think that I'm really, really, really excited to see like what he brings to the table, because like he's not like as old as some of the other pieces, but he is like pretty like has pretty established like numbers and pretty good performance. So I'm really interested to see like how he plays like really in that pivotal year, like being going into his junior year, where I really feel like players really either start to really take off or they really plateau. So we'll definitely have to see like how that goes. Looking at like his comparison of performances, over his first 2 seasons. He improved his 3-point percentage efficiency by like 12%. His free throws, not great. We actually don't have super strong free throw game with a lot of our players, which is slightly concerning, but also I think like our players are like it seems like they're pretty good about staying out of foul trouble, so that should be fine. But yeah, I guess that'd be a nice thing to have if we had like a really strong free throw shooter, but I don't think we really are going to have that this year, which is fine. It's not make or break for a team by any means. And then his rebound numbers like improved. His field goal efficiency improved a little bit as well. And yeah, I think he's going to be great. I think he's going to be a depth piece that, again, we're going to see in that sort of like 8 to 10 man rotation pretty consistently, and I think he's going to get pretty good minutes as well.
Yeah, I think he's someone that can kind of be an older version of what we expected DJ Wagner to be, right? He's a 6'5" upcoming junior, someone that can be kind of a bucket getter when we need him to be. I think DJ Wagner was kind of supposed to be that. I think he was really good until he kind of had that injury against Miami at that half, right when we won 95-72. So I do think he can be really good. I think there is a possibility he can be starting at some point this season. I don't think the starting 5 is guaranteed for anybody on this team, so I'm really excited for him. So yeah, I'm really excited for this roster. I think we have a lot of potential. I know we do also have one more scholarship. I wonder if we kind of pursue someone else, or like Cody Fieger said, we kind of wait it out, see if there's a European or international prospect. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I think that'll wrap up like our first episode. Next time we'll dive into like the SEC rankings and kind of how we feel like we fit amongst them. Spoiler alert, I don't think either of us think we're going to be number one going into the SEC preseason. But I am going to put us a lot higher than I think a lot of people probably other teams are going to rank us, which again, that's fine. Hate on us now. And we'll prove you wrong later. We love being the underdog. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in for the first episode of Bleed Blue Zone. This has been Jacob and
Casey,
and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Bleed Blue Network podcast. We hope you enjoyed diving deep into the world of Kentucky sports with us. Don't forget to stay connected by following us on Twitter at BleedBNation. Your feedback means the world to us, so take a moment to leave a review. Not only does it help us improve, but it also helps others discover the show. Until next time, keep cheering, keep listening, and keep bleeding blue.